Lot to cover this evening. I hope you'll stick with us. I want to start with impeachment. I don't know what it's going to take. I really don't. To try and shake some sense into our Republican friends in the House. I'm not one to typically hammer away at the Republicans in the House. They're far superior to the Republicans in the Senate as a group. But that said, ladies and gentlemen, there are impeachable offenses committed by this president that punch you right in the nose, that every American can understand, that affects every American, directly, some indirectly. When you listen to some of my friends on TV or on radio go through a long iteration of monies that were given to the Biden family, you need to understand that the vast majority of Americans, their eyes glaze over. Now, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be pursued constitutionally through impeachment. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be pursued criminally. But you're selling impeachment, which is not a criminal process, the removal of a president of the United States. And when you have an overwhelming case that is understandable to Mr. and Mrs. America, why don't you use it? Now, what's Mark talking about now? It's only a matter of time till everybody repeats it on radio and TV, and maybe some in Congress. I hope so. Here's my point. I explained it briefly on Hannity. I'm going to explain it at great length on Sunday on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And by the way, 4 great guests Saturday and Sunday. Dershowitz, David Schoen, Leo Terrell, Richard Goldberg. These are fantastic guests for fantastic issues. But it'll be the last weekend shows for Life, Liberty, and Levin until the new year. We'll have some specials that are fantastic because I just finished working on them. But this weekend is the last live 2 shows until next year. So I encourage you to set your DVR, your smart TV, or whatever you do. Back to the point. The President of the United States, for reasons I've explained, is violating the Constitution and his oath of office by not just defying our immigration laws, obliterating our immigration laws and their purpose. You say, what's going on the southern border is outrageous. Yes, it is. It's also unconstitutional that he won't enforce the immigration laws. He doesn't get to change them by executive fiats, executive orders, and so forth, or blowing off the law. You don't need depositions. You don't need subpoenas. You don't need documents. You don't need texts. You don't need witnesses. It's just a fact of Biden regime policy. That there's mayhem, inhumanity of an unimaginable level taking place on the southern border. Now, you know it's really, really bad because most of the corrupt Democrat Party media won't cover it. Or they cover it a little, swing into it and then swing out of it. But Americans are dying by the tens of thousands because of open borders, drugs. People are being physically abused and raped and sold into sex slavery, women and children, elementary school age children. We don't control the southern border. That's our sovereignty. That's our country. This is by intent. This is purposeful. This is part of an ideological agenda. People say, let us impeach the head of DHS. No, why waste your time? He's doing what Biden tells him to do. So they have an impeachment inquiry resolution that passed with every Republican for it and every Democrat against it. I read the resolution such as it is. It's very broad, and it certainly would allow the House of Representatives to consider this issue as part of a impeachment report This should be Article 1. Article 1 in an impeachment of Joe Biden. Article 2. Without any constitutional authority whatsoever. In fact, worse. In violation of a Supreme Court ruling. In fact, worse. Undermining separation of powers by seizing the power of the purse from Congress. Joe Biden, with a magic wand, cost the American Treasury $500 billion in student loan forgiveness, quote unquote. Student loan forgiveness. The president does not have the power to seize that authority from Congress. He defied a Supreme Court ruling. He and his administration went around two branches of the federal government under our Constitution. One that has complete control over the purse. The other that was asked to rule on it and did. And Joe Biden still stole $500 billion out of the Treasury to try and pay off part of his base. That's a clear violation of his oath of office. And it's a clear violation of his responsibility to take care that the laws of the United States are executed. That's impeachment article number 2. Impeachment article number 3. The main responsibility of a commander-in-chief, that is the president, is America's national security. That's why he has the commander-in-chief title and responsibility. He is the executive branch. When the commander-in-chief knowingly and actively is providing aid, financial support, diplomatic cover for a terrorist regime that has killed American soldiers, that has kidnapped Americans, that as I speak is trying to kill more American soldiers and attack American bases in the Middle East, that is funding terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and many more. When the President of the United States specifically hires an envoy who's a special pleader for the Iranian regime, and that envoy in turn hires people, one of whom may well be a spy, that envoy who's so bad had his clearance revoked by the Biden administration. Under cover of darkness, they won't tell us why. But when the President of the United States institutes waivers on a regime that ensures that tens of billions of dollars will pour into its coffers, that in turn takes that money and helps build weapons for Russia to attack Ukraine, that has built an alliance with North Korea, built an alliance with Communist China, and is funding all this terrorism, these attacks on Americans, when a president of the United States rearms this regime, rearms it, a regime that targeted our former Secretary of State, our former National Security Advisor for assassination, these are collectively an impeachable offense. It's a high crime. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 are high crimes. What's a high crime? The framers looked at, among other things, English common law. It's where they came up with the idea of impeachment to begin with. They read it, they looked at it, and what did it say? It said that an individual who takes an oath and is thereby in a unique position of authority, who can affect the well-being of a society, who takes steps or fails to take steps to secure that society, has committed a high crime. That's what the word high means in that context. In other words, it's a constitutional violation. Joe Biden has done that on immigration. He's done that on the power of the purse. He's done that as a commander-in-chief who is funding our enemy. Article 3 is the third priority for impeachment. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 in the Mark Levin impeachment are completely understandable by Mr. and Mrs. America. Let the Democrats and the media and the other members of the Praetorian Guard circle their wagons and try and protect their president. They will fail. These are black and white issues. These are good and bad issues. These are good and evil issues, right and wrong issues. And in every case, there's no need for subpoenas, documents, texts, phone records, witnesses. It's a matter of policy, the official policy of the Biden regime to do these things. To do these things. And then you can have Article 4, which is discussed endlessly on cable, where the 1, 2, or 3 chairmen of the various committees are brought in, where they speak quickly and talk about Devin Archer and this, that, and the other. They have a very strong case, I think, against Biden. Apparently Chuck Grassley can't see it, but then again, that's not the standard. But Chuck Grassley can see Mark's Article 1. Chuck Grassley can see Mark's Article 2. Chuck Grassley can see Mark's Article 3. And it becomes an imperative, an obligation of members of Congress who also take a different oath of office, but one that is close enough to the oath that the president takes, that they have an absolute obligation to vote an impeachment and indictment of Joe Biden for the deaths, the rapes, the chaos, the economic consequences, what happens in our schools, law enforcement with illegal immigration. They have an absolute obligation to prevent a president of the United States from seizing power under our Constitution from another branch of government. They have an absolute obligation to impeach, indict, and really remove an American commander-in-chief who is subsidizing, who is funding our enemy. Neville Chamberlain appeased Hitler, peace in our time. But he didn't send funds to Hitler. He didn't send funds to Hitler's surrogates. He didn't subsidize Hitler by lifting waivers on sanctions. He didn't subsidize Hitler through international organizations. But that's exactly what Joe Biden is doing. The Islamo-Nazis in Tehran, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and all around the world. The American people see it and can understand it. Even those who aren't focused on politics. Article 4, the issues being discussed on the Hill and on cable and radio, they can't follow that. And when you have Democrats in the media really gumming up the works, claiming there's nothing here, lying about it, covering it up, makes it even harder. Again, it should, in fact, be Article 4 of impeachment. Because the Bidens sold Big Daddy's office. They made over $30 million. And if people don't want to believe that, they're blind to it. But people will believe and do understand the first 3 articles. I am pleading this case over and over and over again to the Republicans. Get your act together. You've got a strong, strong case if you do it right.